So my name is RaeJean Pearce. I'm the Global Head of Government at Squiz. So I just have an opportunity to do a little bit of an introduction to our call today. So first I want to talk about why do citizens go to government websites in the first place? So if you think about your morning commute, for those of you who take public transport, and walk up and down the aisles of the bus or the train, how many people are on their phone? Probably quite a few. They're on there doing social media. They're reading the latest news, or maybe even catching up on some sports scores, or maybe even potentially laying a bet for tonight's game. They could be doing some emails, getting ready to go to work. But how many of those people will actually be on a government website? Will they go to a government website just to browse? And the next slide. The answer to that question is actually no. Constituents know that if they have to call a government office, they're likely to be on the phone for quite a long time. So they'd much rather visit your website to pay their utility bill, apply for a building permit, report a hazard, or alternatively, they may go to your website to search for information that's useful, timely, up to date. No more do we have a better example of that than the last year with what's happened with COVID. How many times will people go to a government website to find out how many cases were recorded, or if you live in Perth like I do, to find out which states we've shut the border to, and will I be able to travel? In today's standard, government websites are about maximizing a citizen's time on the platform. They want to get in, get it done, and get out. And the next slide. So today there are about 2 billion websites. And of those 2 billion websites, about 4 million of them are actually active. So that's a large number of websites, and a lot of them belong to various levels of government, either at the federal, state, or local levels. So how do you get that balance? How do you get the balance between delivering efficient digital services to the citizens and then managing the scale of actually consolidating over 400 million websites? We tend to spin up website after website. How do we bring it all together? And remembering successful government websites that are consistent, accessible, and current. That's what we want to achieve. So the next slide. So you would be surprised, or maybe not, that many government websites actually miss the most important goal, serving the public well. So right now, the government has an amazing opportunity to take advantage of the current environment, to not actually develop websites that enhance the citizens' digital experience, but to actually provide more efficiencies both externally and internally. And the next slide. So by consolidating your websites, or at least the perceived consolidation of these websites, and I say perceived because sometimes it doesn't always make sense to bring all the information together in a single location. Sometimes it makes more sense to present the information as one to the citizens, but maybe in the back end it's going to different agencies or different departments within the same agency. So what is the benefit of consolidating these websites? Well, right now, every community thinks itself is unique. But from city to city, from state to state, from country to country, government organizations exist for the same reason, again, to serve the citizens. And for the most part, the citizens want to provide the same services no matter where you live. So interactions with those services are increasingly expected to be digital, and they want to be able to be smooth. Again, we're going back to the get in, get it done, get it out philosophy. So if you're able to consolidate your websites and present them to your citizens in a more consolidated and concise manner, the citizen doesn't need to know necessarily who they're dealing with in order to get something done. And then transactions that spread across, again, multiple government agencies or multiple departments within an agency can be streamlined to appear singular. I'm in the unfortunate situation right now where I've actually just moved house about three months ago. And I'm actually still trying to figure out how to change my address across all the federal and state and local government agencies that I need to do that for. And federal is quite challenging. So you go onto the MyGov website, but you still need to go to the Medicare website. You need to go to the taxation website. So there are multiple places that you need to go to complete one singular transaction. In the end, I gave up and I went to the post office and extended my change of address notification so I can continue to get my mail forwarded for the next year while I sort this all out. Again, it's not making it easy for the citizen to get in, get it done, and get back out again. And go on to the next slide. So what is the benefit for government? So we talk about the benefit for the citizens and what they're going to be able to achieve by actually consolidating the websites. Well, what is the benefit for government itself? And it really comes down to the ability to be more efficient internally, and actually the number one benefit is, again, to decrease costs. We know that we're in an environment right now, given the year that we've gone through with COVID and the lockdowns, that government budgets and government spending is being increasingly scrutinized, and we need to figure out how we're going to get those cost savings across the board. So if you're able to take those websites that we have, and with the websites that we've spun up in the last year, and figure out a way that we can consolidate them, become more efficient in how we deliver services, the end result is that we decrease costs internally within government. We do that through not continually to reinvent the wheel. Every time we have to spin up a new website or there's a new reason to provide information, we don't start from base zero. If we have a design system or a platform in place that allows us to spin those websites up consistently and easy and more efficiently, then that's a cost reduction for us. We're able to share data and resources, and that data can be across, again, multiple agencies, or it can be just across different departments within the same agency, so that a citizen doesn't have to go to multiple places to change their address. It's able to transfer that information across. That's actually a decreased cost for the government as well. We're able to save resources, share resources, and those resources could be manual resources in terms of the people who are working on the websites, or it could be about hosting resources, integrations, technical resources in the back end. Again, being able to share those across multiple departments or agencies is going to decrease the overall cost. And most importantly, we get a consistency of brand for our citizens. Again, when we talk about what citizens want to do, to be able to get onto a website and get what they want done, they don't want to have to figure out how to do it differently at each level of government or each agency within that level of government. So by providing that consistency of brand, again, we're able to provide more efficiencies both internally and externally. So that's what we're here to talk about today in terms of how are we actually able to start on that process and embark on that journey of pulling all that data together and providing a more consistent approach to our citizens. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, RaeJean. Really great information, I'm sure, for our attendees. And with that, I'd like to bring in Stephen Wernicke, Digital Program Manager from Queensland Health. Him and RaeJean are going to have a fireside chat to continue the conversation. Thanks very much.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you today?
Hey there. I'm really good, thanks.
Great. So I think what we'll do is we'll just jump straight into the questions, because I know we have a limited amount of time. I'm sure everyone's here is keen to hear about your experience.
Sure.
So if we start at the beginning, how did you start your transformation process?
Well, let me see. Queensland Health is it's a pretty big organization, so we got over 100,000 staff, and the way that the organization is organized is it's spread out geographically and a little bit culturally as well, I think, because there's the department which supports the rest of Queensland Health, and some people joke that Queensland Health could also be called Queensland Hospitals, because really it's all about, or mostly about, delivering those services to citizens. So there's 16 different regions all around Queensland, and each one is set up as its own statutory authority. And within bounds, it's got capabilities of making its own decisions. So as you can imagine, over time, in absence of effective governance and sort of, technological guidance, various bits and pieces, public-facing web properties spring up like an exotic garden. As with any garden, you've got some areas that flourish, some that don't, and so on. And so there was an audit done in 2018, and predictably the audit said, well, this is providing a pretty fragmented user experience for the citizen who doesn't really care about the way Queensland Health is put together. It just wants a seamless journey to find the information, primarily information, and not so much services are delivered online these days. And so as a result of that, my team was set up about 2 years ago, and it started with a team of 1 person, and it's grown to a team of 11 people. And so we're web specialists, and we're focused on future state. as opposed to current state. So a current state is being effectively managed by a separate team, still within the same branch, but we've got the luxury of being exclusively future focused. And that's pretty much how we got set up, and quite presciently, I think we weren't given a specific mandate. We were let to do the discovery ourselves and understand what the needs were, and consequently we're taking a very expansive view of the challenge, and we've got over 100 different websites, and certainly there's consolidation to do. There's a very large body of work that needs to pull the user experience together into a consistent manner. And so that's the project that we're engaged in. We're about halfway through, so I expect the project will run till about halfway through 2023, at which time we'll transition to a business as usual, and bring the two web teams together under the one technical umbrella.
And that's a lot of websites to consolidate. And I guess I'm glad you answered more importantly, not just how you started it, but actually why you started the journey.
Yeah.
So, given the old saying that most of these projects are about 90% planning and 10% execution, so if you have a 2-year execution, then obviously there's a lot of planning that went into this. So do you have any tips for everyone about how to prepare for a consolidation project of this magnitude?
Yeah, I guess so. And I think where I'm coming from is that there's two types of planning. There's good planning and there's bad planning. So an example of bad planning would be, a long way out from delivery. You think you know what you need to deliver, and you design it, possibly with some other subject matter experts, and then you build towards that in an unwavering fashion. And with this sort of projects, particularly web stuff, I've found over the years, that doesn't really work very well. You have to do it in a very iterative fashion. The elements are early and frequent engagement. You've got to develop a multidisciplinary team. You've got to be willing to pivot. You've got to embrace change. So some projects I've been involved in are, a new user requirement might surface, and it's like, oh well, no, we can't do that because it involves change requests, and it's too risky. Whereas the sort of mindset that I would recommend is that you have to embrace those things and design it. And really speaking, the sorts of methodology that we're talking about it's agile. And so in terms of planning, this is very well suited towards an agile methodology. So that's one aspect of it, the agile versus the Prince 2 type dichotomy. And then the other aspect that I find it handy to think about a lot is the difference between a program view and a project view. So you can sort of build out your epics and your broad, philosophies and directions on a program point of view, and you need to know where you want to get to and do your discovery with that in mind. But then it's necessary as you go along to drill down into a more narrow project focus as you execute your projects throughout a program. And so those elements might be discrete websites. They might be what I call global components that are like an umbrella over the entire website network. And you've got to, respect the difference between those and let one inform the other.
Great. So you talked a little bit in the beginning about the number of websites and the magnitude of that, and also the location across all of Queensland and where everyone is at. So how do you go about in this situation of getting all the stakeholders brought in and making sure that you keep them engaged throughout the process?
Yeah, it's really hard in an organization like Queensland Health that's got 100,000 employees. At first instance, even to understand who the stakeholders are, and because you can imagine you got a range of let's say clinicians, You've got a range of people in the public, obviously, patients and carers. You've got the staff themselves, other staff, and you've got industry groups too. And so to stay engaged with those people, I think you've got to keep your own house in order, in that you need to understand that the coinage of your realm, so to speak, is trust. And so in order to gauge effectively with a stakeholder, you have to adopt the mindset that you are going to do what you say you're going to do. Otherwise, that stakeholder isn't going to trust you and want to engage with you. They'll think that you're just another project that's come along. Because something like this, typically in an organization, might already have several stops and starts. So you've expended your trust capital, and you've got to really earn it. And so that process takes time, and it takes time to find out who's who in the zoo. And so if you engage, broadly and often, I think the cream will rise to the top, and you'll end up with champions and key networkers within your stakeholder network who you've proved to them that you're trustworthy, and they're willing to, I guess, commit to you. So when it comes to the way in which we engage, of course, we embrace, the Digital Transformation Agency's service delivery model. And that's something that I'm really, really pleased that the Queensland government more broadly is beginning to engage. So there's a digital services policy that's in its final stage of draft, which specifically references that. And that will take, it's design thinking, agile methodology, and so on. Really perfect for service delivery. And you look at an organization like Queensland Health that doesn't have a long history of that methodology in practice. It's more so the big, like I said, it's a different type of project management. And so, I'm really pleased that the organization recognizes the need to move in that direction, and is beginning to make some pretty substantial moves toward it. And that will take, I think, some time to percolate down through the ranks. In the meantime, though, my project is really happy to keep continuing and use the agile methodology. And I think we're probably one of the more agile run projects within Queensland Health. I'm very proud of that.
Great. So it's interesting because you talk about gaining trust in the stop-startup projects, and I think that's probably pretty relevant. We've been hearing about website consolidations and changes to services for quite a few years, and I think that it is challenging to make sure you get your stakeholders on board. So when you think about your project, and I'm sure you set some benchmarks out for yourself, so how are you going to measure the success of the consolidation project, and how do you communicate that back to the stakeholders to keep them on board?
Yeah, so we've arranged, I guess, in addition to the discrete sort of consultation that we do in relation to different project elements, we over time have built up a range of, I guess, forums, and so that would include our sort of fortnightly sprint reviews that are sort of agile ceremonies. We've also got an advisory group comprised of probably 50 people from across the system. We meet once a month. There's a steering committee and so on, and a few other ways that we engage with stakeholders. And so, using those, and we video everything as well, make them available, and we put everything online in Confluence so that people can, if they miss a meeting, they can go back and get it. So we've ticked all those boxes. The sort of metrics that you want to work on for a project like this are varied. And once again, it's the two-tier thing. You've got the broad program benefits realization metrics, and also you've got project-specific ones. So an example would be we use the HEART framework. So it's happiness, engagement, so on. So it's a standard framework that people in my industry use. And they can be manifested through a range of tools. Obviously, good use of Google Analytics, building out dashboards, making them available broadly to stakeholders once something is deployed. Use products like Hotjar, use Squiz's own and Funnelback's own reporting. And as part of the governance of the discrete projects that we work on, we create a scope of works for each one, and that references a more broad service agreement. So that sets out the four corners of the agreement between us and whatever stakeholder we might be working with. And it's really important to sit down at the beginning of every project and reach agreement with the stakeholder as to what's important to them. So, if you are a hospital and health service, for example, you might have, your board might have specific metrics. You might have specific cost-saving measures that you want to achieve, specific engagement patterns. With somebody like Breast Green Queensland, they might want to increase the number of bookings they take online and so on. And so there's no one-size-fits-all in a sort of a broad program like this. You have to have the, overall, we want the program to, provide better experience for users, save money, and so on. And on a project level, you want to achieve those things, but perhaps in a different way.
Yeah, and that sounds really great. And I think that's what we see a lot across a lot of consolidation projects. If you don't set up and understand what direction you want to go and put measures in place to get there, then you tend to have projects that linger on, or are those projects, like you said, that stop and start because they actually measure the benefits of what they're trying to do. And it's great to see that you're measuring both externally in terms of the number of bookings and decreasing those calls as you are internally in terms around the cost savings. So that's really setting that project up for success.
That's right, and you want to avoid the heartache of having to go and retrofit or your benefits after you've done the project, because that's not a pleasant experience, and it's better to and identifying benefits. It's often not the most exciting thing in the world. It's, you want to get in and do the fun stuff. But what we've found is it pays off to do that bit of hard work early to set yourself up for success.
Brilliant. So I'll get to a little bit more specific questions on marketing. So one of the things that we've seen across consolidation projects across government, and one of the challenges that I think government often faces is that individual departments or agencies don't want to lose control over their own data, and they still want to maintain their flexibility even though they're embarking on a consolidation project. So how did you go about bringing together the different technology stacks and the different data sets that to enhance the customer experience, but still giving those individual groups control and, well, a feeling like they're still a part of the process?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you call us lucky or unlucky, but the situation we find ourselves in is that we're working off a fairly low base. And what I mean by that is that the Queensland Health website network, it's large and it's broad. There's a lot to it. Most of it is focused on information delivery. So there's not a lot of system integration at the moment. We're planning some sharing of data in that way. But it's important to frame up this particular project at this stage that we're at as being mostly information-based and figuring out efficient ways of delivering information. With an organization, or any large organization probably, there are difficulties in trying to mandate adoption. So what we're doing is we're building a really solid foundation, and with the way that we're planning it out, not only with us, but with our friends elsewhere within state government as well, keeping an eye on what's coming down the pipeline. So, I guess our plan is to just make the service offering so good that when the time comes for sort of more heavy data integration. The platform is going to be irresistible. So it's important to remember as well that you know, there's a dichotomy between you know, centralization of power and distributing power, for want of a better word. So we've got no intention to disrupt the distributed publishing model. We very much want to respect the independence that each statutory authority has got. And because, you know, if you start going in heavy-handed, then you've got problems with adoption. So you have to build a flexible approach, and that's something that I call freedom within boundaries. And so provided you make the boundaries good enough and flexible enough and designed so that they can be adopted by a range of stakeholders, then I don't think that there's going to be a problem. So, you know, what is important to us as well is that we use Squiz matrices and Funnelback's capabilities properly, and because that I think it'll do two things. One, it'll really show people what's possible and get them excited about the future, as well as, like I say, setting up a good groundwork and foundation for success.
Absolutely, and good to hear that Squiz and Funnelback is in there. I'm going to jump into one of the questions that from the audience, and I guess it goes a little bit to the background that we could have talked about a little bit earlier. So the question is, how long has Queensland Health been on the consolidation journey?
Since probably April 2019, and the journey is not. It's we spent a long time in discovery. We probably spent probably 8 months in discovery, or even longer, depending on sort of what things you count, and that's just for the sort of the overall discovery. Once you get into the different projects itself, you know, they've got their own sort of discovery sets. But that's how long it's been, and you know, like I said, there's over 100 websites. It's hard to figure out sometimes what you call a website. How do you define a website? Because you could have something under one domain, but it's got different sections in it. Each section has got its own, you know, set of information, possibly its own navigation, its own you know, owner of that information. So you could almost sort of call that a website. But you know, when you count them all up, there's 100 of them. Currently, you know, after 2 years of work, my team we've delivered four websites, which is not a large percentage of the whole, but it's like an iceberg. The work that we've done underneath, you know, where you see, which is in building out the design system and doing discovery on these global components, will make each implementation easier and easier. And our approach is to really go broad with stakeholder engagement and have multiple projects on the books at the same time, because what we find is that content is one of the biggest challenges. And so, and as we all know, when you engage with stakeholders, sometimes those stakeholders are busy and they can't always adhere to your timeline. So it's very handy to have quite a number of these in play, so that if one hits a roadblock, you can show it, move on to the other. So we've got probably a dozen different websites under construction at the moment.
Great. And I'm going to stick with a couple more audience questions for a while. We'll go back to mine. So the next one is consolidation happening at Queensland government level, or is it just a cluster approach as you've done with health? So talking about going on Queensland government at a larger scale.
Yeah. Well, I guess I can't really speak too much about more broadly in Queensland government. So within Department of Communities, Housing and Digital Economy, there's a customer digital group which we work closely with, and it's been very important for us to work sort of hand in glove with them as we go along. And what I mean by that is consult early and consult often. And we were incredibly lucky with the timing in that, around about the same time as we started building out our design system, they were saying, oh, well, we might need one of those ourselves, because they've got certain other things that are reaching end of life. And so what I would say there is that they do have things coming down the pipeline, and we are working with them to make sure that we achieve efficiencies so that we can eventually adopt the same design system. In other words, we'll build ours out, and this is the way we've done it right from the outset. The only way I could figure out how to future-proof this was actually to know what the state government was going to do and sort of work with them towards that same goal. And so that will continue over the next, certainly the rest of this year. We're going to modify what we've done so it's a lot more easily used by state government. And then from next year onwards, hopefully that work will continue. But as to exactly what's happening within the consolidation space there, you probably need to talk to somebody in that department.
Yeah, but certainly in an open conversation, and a great example of the work that Queensland Health is doing is actually influencing outside of just Queensland Health, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and it's for our own selfish purposes as well, because the last thing I want to do is build something out and then have somebody else come and tell me that it was the wrong thing to do. So that's why we had to, speaking of engaging the stakeholders, that's been a really key part of our strategy.
Right. And the third question from the audience is actually around stakeholders a little bit. So, have you faced any challenges with digital literacy and capability uplift when delivering the project? So they're talking about the stakeholders being able to understand agile, customer journeys, and using the CMS, accessible PDFs, etc.
Yeah, that is our biggest challenge. We can control a lot of things and to control that is probably the hardest thing. So we've had in government you've got the Gate 4 audits and so on, or reviews, and pretty much that came out as being our main area of risk, and that is that sort of ongoing support that is provided to stakeholders. And so all those things that you spoke of, and that is, a wide range of capabilities. And also it's believe it or not, website transformation is not, top of mind for absolutely everybody out there. I think it should be, but other people have got, very busy schedules and things that they need to be working on. So, part of the challenge is making sure that the things that you develop are comprehensible and easily communicable. Quite often in the project, we reach a fork in the road where we go, should we go this way or that way? I always choose the way that's it's most easy to explain to people, because along the way you got to make people understand what it is you're doing in order to bring them along for the journey. So and that's one of the tests that we use as well. How easily can we sort of make people understand what the reasons that we're doing these things, and if it's too difficult to explain, then maybe it's not the right thing that you're doing. So, probably over the next, and what I've committed to over the next financial year is to improve the capability uplift and training component of what our deliverables are, and there's a lot of work in that. That's, like I say, it's one of the hardest parts of this project. So, as everybody knows, it's not always the technology that's the hard bit, it's actually dealing with the human beings. Yeah,
and that's why I'm going to go to another audience question, because I think my questions were more back towards but I'm going to stick to the audience questions because I think it's what people want to hear. And the next one is, given the nature of government, which is, as we all know, constantly changing with the restructures and organizational change. So given that, how were you able to push through this challenge and continue to consolidate with velocity?
Well, I don't know if we're consolidating with velocity. I think what we're doing is we're making it easier and easier to consolidate by putting the groundwork in and lowering barriers to consolidation. And some of those barriers are barriers of understanding. So we are building out, knowledge bases where we can easily point people at the work that we've done, so they can they can understand it. So achieving velocity and consolidation, in the early stages, I suppose we flew under the radar a little bit. So we were like a little branch-based, so I'm part of strategic communications branch within the department. And once we had something that we were able to demonstrate, then it was much easier for us to spread our wings and get buy-in from more senior stakeholders. So I would say that it's probably not the case that this project was begun with a specific broad-based consolidation in mind. That's just where the discovery led us. And so as part of that, I've had to do, I guess, a job in explaining to people where we wanted to go and why we wanted to get there. And, you know, there will be some areas of the organization, I think, that are more amenable to change than others. But like I said, what we're doing is proving to be so effective, and much of it is so easy to explain that it's becoming almost an irresistible argument. And so that's, I guess, my approach is I want to sort of make the momentum increase as we go along, and you only do that by spending the time to do the research, build a really solid foundation.
So it sounds like it's a great approach to a project, but probably different than what we're used to seeing, where we actually start from the top down and figure out how we're going to consolidate across everything, whereas you've taken it actually almost from the bottom up. So
yeah, grassroots. That's right. And we started with well, like I keep saying, it's a lot of discovery. You know, for example, we had like this, 16 hospital and health service regions. We ran what you call kitchen table sessions. So there's an organization called Health Consumers Queensland, which is set up specifically to engage with consumers. It's a statutory requirement to involve consumers in these sorts of things. We had like 18 of these sort of grassroots sessions where you get culturally, linguistically diverse people, rural people, rich people, poor people, in different settings, informal settings, just to really hear from them, what it is they want to do and see in their own words. And that's research that we come back to time and time again. And that was broad-based research. And then when you get into the different project elements, you have to do that research again, but with a specific focus. And it really underpins everything that you do. And that's what really gives you the credibility to keep going, because it's not just your own harebrained scheme that you're cooking up. You're actually sort of saying, well, this is what the research says is the correct approach, and it's an evidence-based methodology.
And so you probably knew I was going to throw some technology questions, but given the time that we have, I'll probably just wrap them all into one question, because obviously there's challenges with legacy systems, bespoke applications, permission, security, all sorts of things that you would have had to deal with along the way. But I guess just to wrap it up, what are some of the challenges, like the main challenges that you've seen with this project and any other projects that you've been involved in that people just need to be aware of?
That's a really good question. What I would say is that the challenge for a project like this is to make sure that you engage or embrace agile methodology. A lot of people pay lip service to it, but don't do it properly, and it just really gives you dividends, because that's why it's embraced by the Digital Transformation Agency. So is to focus and give credence to what the DTA is saying, and you do that through getting the right people as part of your team. So it's really hard to get somebody with no experience in that way of running projects to actually deliver good work when you're a small team like what we are. So we've got sort of people who are natives in that skill set, and that's partly what has really set us apart. And then secondly, what I would say is that things that I've seen out there is not giving UX an equal seat at the table with something like security. Security is, you know, imagine an organization like Queensland Health, it's absolutely paramount and vital. And, you know, it's easy, I think, for some people who've spent their lives working, you know, in a certain way on a certain type of system or set of systems, just to keep that focus and then sort of try to tack UX on at the end. Whereas my suggestion would be to embed a UX and CX mindset right from the very beginning of the project, and let it evolve together with the other requirements of the project, and that way you'll avoid shipping a really crummy product. Because it's like the iceberg again, right? So you know, so much focus can be on what happens behind the scenes in the back end, but the public doesn't care about all that. They care about the little bit that they see, and so your whole project can be judged on their user experience, and so that's why I think with public-facing products, you need to give UX an equal seat at the table.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more that the perception and what the citizens see in the front end and what your users are going to see on the front end is what we judge websites by. It's not about what's going on in the back. There's an inherent, we want to trust you, that everything's set up, all the security is there, and just show us how we need to get done what we need to get done.
Yeah. And with an organization like Queensland Health, trust is it's what it's all about. It's hugely important.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Stephen. I really appreciate it, and I'll hand back over to Anil.
Thanks. My pleasure. See ya.
Thank you so much for that, Stephen. Thank you, RaeJean. I'm sure you can see just from the questions we got from the audience some really informative stuff there. So again, just want to thank our partners, Squiz. Want to thank Stephen and RaeJean for being here today with us. I hope everyone got quite a lot out of this. Thank you again for joining, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Take care, everyone.